seconds. It's always the way when you start a presentation, something goes wrong. Okay. Hopefully you're up and running now. What we're going to start with is to look actually at the competition itself. We're sure that you guys have been, dreaming of the competition, staying up late at night thinking about it, getting tattoos of elements of the competition on your arm. But just to make sure you know really what the aims of this competition are about, we are going to share that. So this competition is all about making London a better place, cleaner, greener, ready for the future. And this is the #1 takeaway from today. Make your problems about the city. So many problems impact really broad audiences across the UK, potentially more broadly across the world. But when you're framing the problem you're looking to solve and how your solution solves it, use stats and use stories that are London-centric. So if you're looking at unemployment, don't look at unemployment across the UK. Say, we have 6% unemployment rates in London, and that rises to 16% in under 25s. By the way, all of the stats I'm using today, I just make up. So please do not quote me as a research source. Or, if you're looking at loneliness and aging, say, in East London, there is an acute challenge around loneliness and aging communities. And every application is asked to place itself within an award category. Environment, so reducing carbon emissions and improving the environment in London. Tech award, tech innovations to make London a better place to live and work. Creative industries, so making creative industries more sustainable. That might be art, design, fashion, music, theatre. Health award, so that might be about physical or mental health for Londoners. But some of you will be thinking, which category does my idea fit into? And the good news is that the team at the Mayor's Fund for London will actually just put you in the relevant category if they think you're in the wrong one. So don't worry too much about getting the category right. But if you're building an app that is tech, but it has health impact, we'd probably suggest that goes in the healthcare award. Same with technology and creative industries or environment. So it is more specific. Okay, so the subject of today, how to write a compelling application. And the analogy we use is to imagine the judge's level of trust like an empty glass of water. They don't know who you are, they don't know anything about your idea, and it's your role to fill them with trust, excitement, inspiration with your idea. And there's all sorts of ways that you can do that. Clarity. So a lot of your ideas may be really complex, but positioning it to them so that anyone can understand really helps making it more compelling, and we'll share more about that in a moment. Originality. What makes your idea different? What makes it special? What makes it unlike other stuff out there? We're also later this afternoon going to look at innovation and what kind of originality means. Commercialization, how to make money from your idea. Again, this afternoon, we're going to look at different revenue models or ways of making money. And then lastly, relevance to the awards and how the idea has societal or environmental impact. So thinking about those categories and thinking about the broader mission of this competition, how do you make London a better, cleaner place to live? And last of all, we want you to think about you. What is it about you that should fill the judges with confidence? What have you studied that's relevant to your idea? Do you have a undergrad, master's, PhD in your topic? What have you spent time thinking about, staying up late at night reading about? And who have you spoken to? Those of you who have gone out and done primary research and spoken to your users and figured stuff out about how the problem you're solving impacts them, that is powerful stuff, because it proves how knowledgeable you are and how passionate you are about making this happen. And most of all, that you know something that other people don't. So really play that up in your application. You also really want to think about what makes people, or in this case, the judges, think, tell me more. I want to find out more about this idea. And there's a few different ways to make that happen. Surprise. Use stats or statements to make them think differently. Start with why. So talk about the benefits before the features. We'll cover that in a second. Clarity. Engage me in your story with simple, intelligible language. What happens, certainly to me, when someone shares an idea with me that is too complex and the language is too technical, is actually I feel cut out from that idea. I feel frustrated, and that, means that I'm less likely to engage with the idea. But if someone can convey it in a really simple way and think about the impact of that idea before talking about the technical language, then that will inspire me to engage with your idea. Evidence. Make me believe your story by proving your claims with evidence. Use stats that you've discovered. Talk about what your potential users have said. If you have launched or started testing your product, what are the outcomes of that? How many people have you signed up for your newsletter? Or, what ratings people are giving for your products? How are people interacting with them? Use evidence to validate your idea. And then lastly, excitement. Inspire me that what you're doing is novel, indispensable, and achievable. And by the way, when I say me, I mean the judges, and I'm not one of the judges. So I'm not open to bribing, because that will get you nowhere. But the last point about excitement, when I was working at King's and helping to run the startup program there, we used to talk to people about how to elevate the register at which you talk about your idea. Because a lot of people, we found, would talk about their idea at a kind of quite a crowded register that was kind of middle of the road. So, if they were thinking about food waste, they would say, oh, well, we're setting up an app that helps people find food that is going to waste, and we connect people together and make it easier to find. But it kind of felt mid-register. It felt like things that maybe we'd come across before. So instead, we said to people, before sharing your idea, say, I am going to change the world. I am going to change the world. And just those few words help elevate really the level of inspiration that you're using to talk about your idea. So I'm going to change the world. I'm addressing food waste to give people at a time of cost of living crisis access to healthy, nutritious, and low-cost food, while at the same time reducing carbon emissions. In a given week, I can reduce people's food bills by 18%, and ultimately look to cut CO2 emissions from food waste by 40% in London. Suddenly, that level, the register, the ambition of what you're setting out to achieve is so much higher. Howard, is now a time to pause for any questions, or should we keep going?
Keep going. There are none at the moment.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the flood to, the gates to open and everyone start asking in a moment.
Good stuff. Okay, so now we've mentioned this slide or something related to it earlier, but really Howard and I wanted to refer to the way people often structure their responses, and in particular the order of that structure. So here is an example which I'm calling Start With What? Start with what you're doing. Our app uses the latest advancements in machine learning and computer vision, coupled with predictive analytics to generate referral pathways for cancer diagnoses. How we do that? GPs use our app to capture signs of cancer at the earliest stage. Why? 67% of cancers are diagnosed too late, costing the NHS huge amounts of money, causing over 100,000 deaths. Imagine if we could transform diagnosis by empowering GPs to detect these symptoms at the earliest stage. So, what do you think about that as a description of an idea, and what might you do differently? Feel free to unmute or write in the chat. What could make this more compelling? Hello.
Hi, I'm Antoinette. So I would probably reword it by not using words like predictive analytics and computer vision. So I'd maybe use a bit more accessible language.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you could sort of guess what that's about, but I would really simplify it and just say our app helps predict, or possibly helps predict cancer diagnosis earlier, mm-hmm. with the help of, I don't know, technology. I would just use something really
for sure.
Basic.
For sure, I really agree with that. Thank you. Any other thoughts on this? How else could this be improved? So what I'm driving at here is really about the order of these bullet points. And it opens with this very kind of pragmatic, technical language, which is interesting, but not necessarily inspiring. And so instead, we wanted to share this model that was developed by a brilliant man called Simon Sinek. And it's called Start With Why. And so he gives, in his brilliant TED talk, check it out if you have time, with the example of Apple, and thinks about, if they start with what does their pitch sound like? And it is, hey, at Apple, we make computers and hardware devices. How we do that? Our products are beautifully designed and easy to use. Why we do that? We believe in fundamentally challenging the status quo and doing things differently. So what happens, I like to think about the analogy of a plane. That what, how, why is like you start on the ground and then slowly you take off in terms of the register, the pitch, the elevation of the vision of what you're expressing. But so much more powerful is to start with why. At Apple, we believe in challenging the status quo and doing things differently. Immediately, you're like, wow, tell me more. What are you talking about? I want to know more. How we do that? We design beautiful products that are super easy to use out of the box. Oh, what even do you do? By the way, we make computers and hardware devices. All too often, we see answers to application questions which are like this, which start with what. But what happens if you start with why? 67% of cancers are diagnosed too late, costing the NHS huge amounts of money and causing over 100,000 deaths. What if this could be different? GPs use our app to capture signs of cancer at the earliest stage. And what even is it? Well, it's using AI, machine learning, to generate referral pathways for cancer diagnoses. So I hope you can see just how much more inspiring this answer is. I certainly agree, that some of the technical language could be clarified and could be simplified, but with this structure, you are bringing your audience in so much more directly. The next kind of piece of advice we wanted to share is really about storytelling. And there's something about human nature where the bigger the number, the more we disengage. So there have been studies about, I think there was a study about like the impact of a fire and people's emotive responses. And they measured people's kind of level of response, whether they talked about an individual story, the story of 3 different people, the story of 10, the story of 100, and overwhelmingly, the highest emotive response was from a story of 1 person. And I kind of use that to bring to life basically the impact of using large stats and especially abstracting statistics. So here is one. Did you know that food waste causes 1.8 million tons of CO2 emissions globally? This is a big number. It's impressive. It leaves some sort of impression, but equally, I don't know what that means. What is 8 point, like, is that big? Is that like more than transport or aviation? Like, I can't relativize it in any way. And by the way, it's also global figures, and we're in a London-based competition. So an even better if is to make it more specific. So this version, food waste creates 9% of London's CO2 emissions. So suddenly it's kind of relative to total CO2 emissions. And 10% less would be the equivalent of 100,000 fewer cars on the road. Wow. Okay, I can picture that. I know what 100,000 cars kind of looks like or feels like, and I get it. Like, that's big, right? Again, remember, these stats are all invented, but they are to illuminate this point. Okay, so yeah.
So we have a question, Ed. So it's just talking about how the application is structured.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, first question is, my business idea is, and then the second one is to solve the problem of blah. How can we answer these questions in a way that we can move from why to how to what instead of the other way around?
Okay, it's a great question. So, even when you think about your business idea is, you can start with why. So, this question, what is your business idea? Well, 67% of cancers are diagnosed too late, which costs huge amounts of money and deaths. This could be used to answer that question. Does that make sense?
But then on the problem section, do we go into what we are doing?
So on the problem section, you can then say, let's say, for example, I have spent the last 3 months speaking to oncologists, clinicians, and GPs about cancer diagnosis. And I found something out, that GPs do not have the time or the expertise to pick signs of cancer. This is a huge opportunity, and it's costing the NHS hundreds of millions per year. And I know that we can do things differently. Of the GPs I spoke to, 83% are desperate for a solution to help them better diagnose cancer. Does that make sense? So you kind of go into more detail in each question. You want to unmute and let me know if that's clear? Drop a note in the chat.
So you suggest further expanding on the problem in that section and how we are solving it in more detail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay. So to this point about, these stats, I just had one last example, which is how to be even more specific about framing a problem, which is to be user-centric. Now, when we think about a particular problem, often we assume the problem itself is enough to convince people to do things. But realistically, probably everyone on this call knows that food waste is a bad thing. We know that carbon emissions are a bad thing. We know that driving around in petrol cars are a bad thing. We know that a lot of our clothes are made out of acrylic. But, you know, there needs often to be other motivators to get us to change our behavior. And those motivators go back to the session that we ran last time around hopes, fears, wants, needs, saving money, saving time, getting higher quality, buying into a brand that we believe in, these kind of things. So how do you affect behavior change? And so my last example is about that. 87% of Londoners are concerned about rising food bills. At the moment, you know, that's what everyone is thinking about, the cost of living crisis. Yet 30% of food in the city is wasted. Okay, this is really specific. Now, we're not just talking about food waste and carbon emissions, we're talking about money. And if you tell 100 people that you can save them money, the majority of them are going to say, amazing, tell me how. At the same time, food waste creates 9% of London's CO2 emissions, etc. So bringing it into the lives of the users and the customers that you're looking to serve really helps understand how we're going to affect behavior change through your solution. So now we're going to look at some case studies around the first 5 questions. In fact, actually all 8 questions on the application form. And what we're going to do is share a case study, and we want you guys to write in the chat, or even better, unmute yourself and share some feedback. What's good, what could be improved for each case study. So the first question, my business idea is, so here you want to be clear, what is your idea? App, website, new technology, and what benefits does it bring? So my idea is a platform that tracks carbon emissions across the city. Thoughts on this one? How effectively does it answer the question, and what could be improved?
With this example, don't overthink it. There is one really quick fix that you can do. And this is what we're trying to get is don't overcomplicate it. What is one really quick way you could change this and make it more appropriate for this competition? Yeah, come off mute.
Put London in it.
Yeah.
You can. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, which type of platform? Like, is it an app? Is it a website? Is it, you know, for who?
Definitely, it is very generic at the moment. The platform could be 100 different things. What else?
Very good point as well about London. You just swap, say, get rid of city, put London in there. It makes it so much more clearer for those judging.
But also, this doesn't tell me why. Like, who's this for and what are the benefits? Instead, if you said Carbon Z is an app for cyclists that helps them to understand the most polluted parts of the city so they can navigate London in a faster and more healthy way. So it's for cyclists, and it's about being healthier and faster by reducing exposure to pollution. At the moment, we know that tracking carbon emissions is probably useful, but you need to explain how and for whom and what the benefits are. Okay. Next one. So
just quickly, really interesting question. Is it necessary to do primary research, or can we just stick to secondary research? I think just ask what does the group think about that in regards to primary and or just solely having secondary research? What does everyone think? Anyway,
I can talk, but I feel like I've been talking.
no, it's fine.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously secondary research is great to get it from other sources, like reliable sources, but it maybe shows that you're very proactive if you have some sort of primary research, even if it's just to speak to other professionals, that you're actually doing the footwork.
Exactly that. It gets you a bit more of the narrative as well, and you can start understanding a bit more of the wider context and specifically around the problem that you and the solution becomes a lot more specific, and you remove some generic. That doesn't mean you now need to go interview 1,000 people and find out what everyone's up to on every day to nail down the problem, but just finding out that if you can only find secondary research, then just be aware that's okay. And just cross-reference anything so you can there build and grow on it. Okay, it's just going. Yeah.
So I have a very strong feeling about this question. I'm really glad it came up. That secondary research I describe as safe research. That it's relatively easy to do, and you can do it from the comfort of your home. But really, you can basically justify anything using secondary research, because you can find stats that pretty much like substantiate your hypotheses if you're Googling like far and wide.
Yeah.
But nothing beats the value of speaking directly to your users. So to give an example, during the pandemic, I was working for a tech education startup called FireTech. And we were reading tons of stuff about parents, you know, looking for more vocational skill tracking for their kids, more gamification, use of the metaverse for education, more of a breadth of curriculum, And we're like, okay, cool. So let's build a platform that uses the metaverse, that does skills tracking and gamification, whatever. If we had done that, we would have probably spent £2 million building the platform, and we had no guarantee that people would use it. And honestly, we would have burnt money. It was so much more powerful when we actually sent out an email to 50 of our most engaged parents, and we said, look, we want
You're on mute.
Oh, 1 second, you've been muted, Ed. You're back. No.
How much of that did you hear or did you miss?
50 engaged parents.
Oh, right. So yeah, we emailed them saying, we're building something really important for you. Can you share 20 minutes of your time? So these parents actually signed up. They gave up their time. They brought their kids along, and we showed them some of our ideas, and we learned like crazy stuff, how much they were going to spend. A lot of them were like, what on earth is the metaverse? Some people were like, actually, you know, some of these features we just wouldn't care about. Like in our case, the gamification stuff, they were like, it's cool, but actually it wouldn't make us engage more. And suddenly we had real research, real hard, challenging research. But when, you know, we look at a problem like this, we could then say, we've spoken to 50 parents and we know something that other people don't. It's so much more powerful than saying there are 25 million households across the UK and this is what those families need. It's not specific. It doesn't have true, real, like scientific insights. So
basically do some primary research. Yeah, it is so important. It's also how quickly you learn, and also it removes a massive fear factor as soon as you start to talk to people outside of your network about your idea. You don't have to give them every bit of detail. It's very scary doing it. However, the amount that you benefit and your product and service benefits is exponential, and you can really make some massive strides just by speaking, like Ed said, to a very small group of people compared to how many people use that platform and could have been involved. 1,000-person survey, but 50, very small product, and learned so much and saved a lot of money in the long term. So yeah, that's the way forward.
We were also conscious, you know, we're into the last few days of the program. You might not have time to speak to people or many people. So focus on the application. But if you do have spare time, there's a really powerful email that you can send out to people, which is, hey, I'm Ed. I'm a student at Queen Mary's, and I want to understand how pollution is affecting commuters in London. Do you have 15 minutes to talk to me? I'd love to hear more. Say you're a student, because people really like students. If you say you're a business owner, they think that you're going to sell them stuff. And you can say, I'm applying for this award and it means a lot for me. It's the Mayor's Entrepreneur Award. It's a big deal. I'd love your help. Asking people for help. People respond to that. People love helping, you know, helping people out. So give it a go. Okay, so question 2. What do you think about this answer to the question? We're solving the problem of London residents who are worried by the high pollution in the city. In some areas, pollution in London is 5 times the EU limit. How could we improve this one?
Do we think it's too generic, or where could it be enhanced? Explain how you fix this problem. There's only the why, where. Where is the solution?
So in this question, it's more about the problem rather than the solution. But in this case study, and these are all real case studies, by the way, there's a lot of ways that you can improve this. So number 1, London residents. is this everyone? It is so much better to be specific, because a 10-year-old is very different to a 60-year-old. As I said this morning, I'm 35. If someone compared me to a 55-year-old, I'd probably be like, what? I'm totally different to those guys. I, go to different places, do different stuff, wear different clothes, have different budgets, whatever. Being specific about demographics, areas, age groups, potentially in some cases like gender, preferences, whatever it might be, can help really articulate that you are an expert in this problem. So we're talking about cyclists in these case studies with Carbon Z. So how about saying instead, we solve the problem of cyclists aged 25 to 35 in London who are worried by the high pollution in the city. We know that on average, they commute to work 3 times a week, and they are desperate to find routes to work that are less harmful to their lungs. Because in some areas, pollution in London is 5 times the EU limit. So cyclists, a specific age group, we know that they're commuting to work 3 times, and we know that they are trying to reduce the impact of high pollution on their lungs. That is so much more detailed and specific than this problem. Okay. Right, my main customers. So our tip, avoid saying anyone in London. This is not specific enough. The best ideas solve a problem for a specific group. Who are they? What are their demographics, needs, behaviors, likes, dislikes? Bring your customer persona to life. So this is a real answer from an application. My main customers are London residents. How could we improve this? And I've already given you a big hint with my answer to the last question.
Age range, nationality.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gender, religion. I don't know. Anything.
No.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. We talked about previously before Christmas in some of the workshops around the persona. You don't need to boil it down to everything detail about them, but definitely add those types that build up who you are. Very early startups is important to be something to someone, not something for everyone, because you'll become lost very quickly. So building on that, having that, and making sure it's you know who your main customers are, so you can actually go and talk to them. So when you are introducing your product or service to the market, people can identify with it and go and come with you, and it makes your solution a lot clearer to your problem.
For sure. Another way I kind of bring this to life is by thinking about targeted ads or paid ads. Unfortunately, all of us on this call, for sure, have been the recipient of targeted ads on the internet. For anyone that's ever run an ad campaign, you know how it works. Let's say on the Meta advertising platform, TikTok, whatever it is, Twitter, LinkedIn, there are lots of tools to help you target those ads. So if I spent 10 grand in a month trying to sell my services to all London residents, the reach and the impact of that £10,000 would be so diluted that hardly anyone would click on that ad, and the performance would be terrible. I would waste money, and when people did click on the ad, they would be the wrong audience, and I wouldn't have a solution for them, whatever. Much better if I spent that £10,000 on a specific age range, potentially specific borough, like particular interest groups. Maybe they're environmentally conscious, they wear Patagonia clothes, they shop in particular shops that indicate, particular preferences, they have this much disposable income. All of these things help to articulate that you have a really clear understanding of who your customers are. Howard, any questions in the chat before we moved on?
The only question we had was around difference between users and customers, and do we mention both if they are distinct? I said we come on to talk around kind of route to market and everything, and B2C and B2B and everything a bit later on. So
yeah.
Do you want to pick that up now or then?
I'll address it very quickly now, and then we can share more detail later. So in many cases, who pays and who uses your product or service is the same person. So in this example, let's say, you know, my customers are 25 to 35-year-old cyclists, and I'm creating an app, and they pay for that app. They pay £3 per month. Okay, so users and customers, paying customers are the same. But let's say I was developing an app to connect university students to therapists. It could be that someone else pays. It might be that universities pay me to distribute that app so that students can access therapy services for free. It could be that employers pay so that their employees have free access to cognitive behavioral therapy, or it could be, you know, advertisers pay me to ensure that that service becomes free for the students. So they might be the same group, they might be two different groups, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Okay, so now next onto the unique selling point, or USP. So really this is about how you differentiate your idea from your competition. So there are some very clear ways that you can differentiate yourself. You know, impact, cheaper, faster, more efficient, easier to use, easier to find, that kind of thing. Kind of novelty, does it provide a service for your customers that they need but don't currently have? Has no one thought about this specific idea before? Are you the first to market? Also, potentially the complexity or the protection around your technology. Do you have IP protection, or could you potentially patent your technology? All of these basically help you to capture what's called market share, so to access and retain more customers within whatever market you're in. Another USP can be who you are. You know, have you spent 5 years researching this stuff? Do you know something that other people don't know? Do you have, you know, teams of advisors, partners around you who can help make this idea a reality? There's all sorts of different ways you can have USP. So to bring this to life a little bit, here is a case study. We hope to make London air cleaner and safer for everyone. How do you feel about this answer, and what might you do differently? How could you improve it?
So just on this unique selling point, be really specific. So often so many people just go, oh, my price will be my unique selling point. And it's not very innovative. You just got to think about what could be classed as your unique selling point. Ed mentioned earlier, it could be you, and what are you bringing to it, and the knowledge and resource that you have to your disposal could be your unique selling point. But what could we use in this example to make it more of a unique selling point? We'll come to the question about technology in a moment, but just stick on USP. Would you think 25 years of experience plus adding 25 years of my partner in the field would be a USP? So you have 50 years experience in the same field that you're looking at creating a business. Yeah, that's quite a unique selling point. And if it's, especially if you're compared to the other ones in the sector, that's a really strong case of, look, we have 50 years experience combined within our team, and we're the only people operating, or we've done a PhD in this area, really has that strength and gravitas towards your solution.
As another example, investors at this earlier stage, they really care about the team behind an idea. It's almost the number one thing they're investing in. And so if you've got a combined 50 years experience in a problem area, that sets you apart from other people. They want to invest in those people, right? So to think about this answer and how to make it better, there's so many things you can improve about this. So it's way too generic again. So our technology collects pollution data from a data source that no one else has access to. It gives Londoners a clear picture of the parts of the city most affected by the pollution. And we are the only product that creates bespoke maps to work for cyclists that keeps them safe. For example, we're the only product that also offers discounts through our app to users for them to go to Evans and other cycling shops to get discounts. We are the only product that has protected the intellectual property of part of what we're doing, so other people can't copy it. We're the only product that has a team that combines engineers, climate scientists, and entrepreneurs to make this idea a possibility. Okay. And then lastly, to think about this word innovation. It's used a lot, potentially overused, and I think it's important to think about different areas of innovation. Fundamentally, innovation is very similar to what we call a unique selling point. It gives you greater market share, and there's different ways you can be innovative. So first of all, your product. Does your product have a particular machine learning algorithm that makes it special? Does your textile and your fashion brand use some kind of water or heat resistant technology to keep people drier or better insulated? Does your education program use the latest in curriculum pedagogy for socio-emotional learning? What is it in your product or service itself that makes it exciting? Then also, Howard mentioned about people saying, oh, we're cheaper, that makes us innovative. No, but your business model itself can be innovative. So for example, with the example of student mental health, if you were able to offer therapy for 20% of the market rate, let's say £15 per hour rather than £75 per hour, your business model is cross-subsidized by businesses or sponsors or universities. That is really innovative because you are radically reducing financial barriers to entry for students to get quality therapy. So that's business model innovation. And then operating model innovation, that's like the systems, processes, and structures behind what you do that make it slick. So is it a particular way that you distribute your product? If you're working in food waste, do the customers need to go and collect the waste, the food that's going to be thrown out on foot? Or are you connecting with delivery networks so people can actually get that food delivered straight to their door? There's all sorts of ways you can have operating model innovation, and each of these help develop, retain market share with your customers.
So just a few questions there. I think Ed's actually covered off a lot of that in that final slide around how to be innovative, around that strategies which makes the idea unique. Catherine, are you happy with that and kind of where and what Ed's just discussed? Okay, Mike, are you happy as well? You're saying or winning the award in anywhere else before as a USP. What were you fully meaning with that? No, we can't hear you. Still muted. Yeah.
I asked that the unique selling point for me. I would like to share that this kind of the idea I have win the award before in a green design award, some kind like that, and I would like to emphasize this innovative design to be as the unique selling point. Is that okay?
So you've won an award previously, and you just want to say that you've won an award and to help. Is that, am I understanding correctly?
I won the award before, but it's not in this idea. But from myself, I won the award in a green design before.
Okay, so you've won a green design award in the Mayor's Entrepreneurial Award?
No.
So,
so just to address this, it's fantastic that you won awards and you really want to bring this out in your application. You could put in the USP question, my idea is unique because of these reasons, and that has been already recognized by judges on the panel. It's award that won. So you're ending that answer by really substantiating it.
Okay, because I would like to share that I have a concern about the environment design, so I put focus in this award for the green design. That I would like to point out that okay, I have awareness about the environmental impact, and then put into this new idea that I would like to join in this competition.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Okay, it is 5:05. I think everyone is ready to have a quick break. There's a couple of questions there, but let's pause them for now. If you could, take a quick 5-minute comfort break and be back in the virtual room for 5:10 for the second part of this session. Okay. Next question. This is always one that is, I think, hard to answer, harder than maybe it looks, which is how would you describe your idea to your grandparents? And before sharing the tips, here is an example. My idea is an AI tool that uses blockchain, multiple APIs, and citywide metadata to track pollution in London. What do you think about this answer, and how well does it answer the question? Thoughts, please. There's a lot to say about this one.
Yeah, Kathleen, do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, thank you. It looks too technical and not concrete enough. Basically, if I read it, I don't remember what exactly it is. It doesn't say anything.
Totally. And I don't know if you have grandparents still around, but how would, and someone you know from a previous generation respond to this as a description of your idea?
And also, so a lot of the other comments are too much jargon, a lot of technical jargon, using it for the right audience, needs language that the grandparents can understand. So explore that more, as it's not just grandparents, like Ed said, is it needs to be able to be engaging. What he said earlier, if someone dives too technical too early, it can be a real barrier for you, one, not being able to comprehend or where or what they're actually doing or what problem they're solving. So this is a great litmus test of understanding and using that language and not diving too technical. So just something to keep in the mind there.
Totally. To be really direct about this, and this is the kind of like chimp response theory stuff, that when I read something like this, I feel thick. I feel stupid because I don't understand it. And that makes me disengaged with it. And so, you know, think about that as a kind of part of how we respond to things. We want to feel included in stuff, right? We want to feel like the doors are being opened rather than closed. And this question is really specific. How would you describe to your grandparents? So how would you empathize with a different audience? Well, in this example, we're talking about navigating London in a healthy way as a cyclist. So how about this as an answer? Imagine you're a cyclist in London. Pollution is 5 times higher than the legal limit in many areas of the city, and your lungs are getting impacted. I know that this is something that has long-term health risks. So my idea is to create a tool that gives those cyclists the right information they need to navigate London in not just a fast way, but a health conscious and safe way. Okay. So that is a really clear and compelling, hopefully compelling way to describe it without using tons of technical language. So avoid jargon, technical knowledge, make it relevant to them, use stories, statistics, etc. Okay, Howard, any other questions or comments come through since we stopped?
No, is literally just the last one, which should be more engaging, sell the problem literally as you were saying it. So we're all good on that.
Okay, brilliant. Now, the next one is maybe one that will be familiar for some of you who have gone out and sold something before. But for many of you, and by the way, 60-70% of you guys will be at idea stage, which is fine. Thinking about how to make money might be a question that you haven't yet fully answered. But here are some different ways that you can make money. And before we look at those, there are 3 questions, vital questions you need to answer. Who uses your product? Who pays for that product? And how much do they pay? So as we talked about with this app, who uses it? The cyclists. Who pays for it? The cyclists. And how much? £3 per month on a subscription. Very simple. However, with the student therapy app, who uses it? University students. Who pays? Sponsors, universities, corporates. How much? Well, the university will pay £20 per student per month, for example. I'm making this stuff up. But those are examples of 2 different revenue models. The first is B2C, or business to consumer, where you sell to individual consumers, people like me, Howard, all of you guys on the call. Then there's B2B, which is selling to businesses, organizations, non-profits, government. So B2B includes all of those organizations, not just private sector. Then B2B2C is that example I shared with the student mental health app. So the person who pays is a business or corporate or university, then the people who use are the students. The next model is a marketplace. You see 100 of these around at the moment, tons of them, which is where you connect supply and demand and you charge a fee for that service. So supply of taxi drivers, demand for rides from taxi drivers, and you charge 14-15% of the taxi fee. That is Uber. Supply of spare rooms or vacant properties in London, demand for places to stay in London, that is Airbnb. And they charge 15, 18, 20%, I can't remember exactly the transaction fee. But that is a marketplace. And then the last one is slightly more nuanced, which is called a platform model, where you connect supply and demand, but someone else pays. So with Google, I want to know what revenue model ideas can I teach to my Mayor's Entrepreneur students? Then Google will tell me, here are 5 revenue model ideas that you can teach. But I don't pay for that service. A third party pays, which is that I'll probably be targeted by an advertiser. So a consultancy or a MBA program or someone like Strategizer that develops revenue models for businesses. That is a platform model. It's also similar to in-app advertising and affiliate marketing as well. So yeah, there are some revenue models. Any questions on this? It's a little bit more technical. Would anyone like some guidance or feedback on their revenue models?
So I know we had a question earlier around user and customer and just kind of how the revenue models work and how you need to explain it and focus. Does this give you a bit more information and how it feel comfortable explaining that in your application? Who was it? It was Antoinette. Yes, do you want to?
Yeah, so I've got a question. So with my idea, I sort of have multiple ways that I want to do it, but I'm not sure how well I can describe it within a certain amount of words, like how I would make the money.
Do you want to give it a shot now and we can give you some feedback?
Okay, I've quickly just written something up. So the idea is that there'll be a B2C, so a small subscription service, a subscription fee rather, for a premium service. There'll be a free version to so people would like it, get used to it, and then you can unlock certain features with a small premium service fee for certain features of the app. But then there's also a B2B sort of model as well, or feature, where partnering businesses like local cafes, restaurants, with a focus on independent businesses, can also pay a small fee to sort of be highlighted on the app during like the sort of tours, etc. And then as a platform model, so yeah, I sort of need to figure that one out, but those are the main two.
Yeah. Okay. So I think there's ways of articulating this very quickly. So you can say my app uses a freemium model, where subscribers, paid subscribers, pay $4.99 per month. Again, I'm making up figures, but freemium is the term for that. And we also use affiliate marketing. So we have like featured restaurants or whatever. Let's say people click on that restaurant or make a booking through that restaurant for that restaurant through your app. You can get paid a transaction fee for that, and that's affiliate marketing.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions around this point? For the application, do we need to go into detail about the specific pricing and figures, or is it enough that if we talk about the revenue models?
So I think I always use this phrase, but I think it's useful. Startups are based on hypotheses, and they're about selling a notional vision for a potential future that has not happened yet. You are basically, so even if you've never sold anything, you can say, we believe we will charge $4.99 per month for our app. Or, you know, based on research, we will price it at $4.99. That is so much more compelling than say, we will sell our app, because it shows that you've gone into that thought process to understand your business model, and that you know that your audience can afford £5 per month. Okay. Any other questions at this point?
Yeah. My idea is rated to improving the water usage in the households of London by using a new technology. How can I fit this into a revenue model? It's revenue, identifying the right revenue model is therefore knowing who you're going to sell, who the customer is. Is it a consumer or is it a business? Being aware of that. If you want, can you add a bit more detail about how you're going to improve it? Who's the beneficiary of the new technology? Yeah, I was going to focus on new buildings maybe. So once again, so is that impacting on new builds and the environmental regulations that builders need to, and how will it improve them and go from there? Or is it the actual people that live in the houses and it's going to reduce their water bills and try and make it more sustainable for them and reduce costs for them? Like, who is the real beneficiary there? You need to identify who the customer is, because then that will dictate what revenue model you take. As we said there about the freemium model, okay, it's going to give something to a consumer quite easily, and then they'll sign up to a subscription. That's how you'll generate it. Like, you'll give them something and then they get the full package once it opens. Greenhouse gases and reduces water wasted.
Sorry, just quickly on that data tracking one. I could just share an opinion, which is not advice, but it is certainly my opinion. If you are selling something that will reduce the usage or the cost of utilities into a home, the people that will pay will be the end user, so the resident. I expect, because my landlady has just installed a new boiler and a thermostat in my flat, she paid for that. And if the utility companies pay for that, they're going to be making less money. So they are disincentivized from selling products like that, ironically. So that's one person's opinion for what it's worth. Sorry, Howard.
No, that's it. It's really just identifying who the main beneficiary is, because normally they will be your customer and they'll pay for it. Like, that's a benefit, like Ed was saying. Like, yeah, just be aware of that. Is there anything else you want to add, or any other questions you have around that? Okay. Oh, that's Ed, back over to you.
Great. Okay, so we're into the last two questions, and we're hoping that by 22, maybe 1:45, we can pause to listen to our fantastic guest speaker. So how your idea meets the aims of the award. So have a look at these awards on here. All of this information is on the competition website. How does it fit in to the different award categories. And very much related to that is how your idea will have will positively impact the environment and or society. So to think about impact, I like to divide impact into two categories called outputs and outcomes. And these are slightly different things. So again, to go back to this lovely food waste example, the output is that, let's say, a typical family starts using your app to access lower priced food that might be about to be thrown out by restaurants. Your output, we believe that our app can reduce the average household food bill per week by 18%, which amounts to £18 per week, which is almost £1,000 per year. Pretty good output. An outcome is, what is the longer term, wider impact of doing that? Well, if we can get 10% of households in London using our app, we believe that we can reduce carbon emissions in London by 6%, which is, again, the equivalent of taking 10,000 cars off the road or whatever. So the output is, you know, your individual impact on the users, families, individuals, and then outcomes is thinking about the wider context, which is about CO2. Or in this example, a youth education scheme, the outputs are the skills learned, behaviors practiced, topics covered, but the outcomes, reduced unemployment, you know, reduced dropout rates, reduced crime in young people who might be in and out of young offenders institutions, or even increased lifetime earnings. So that's really powerful, big societal impacts from the youth program. Then for the student mental health example, the outputs, you know, would be a higher number of young people engaging in therapy at a lower cost. And then the wider outcomes, you know, this is transforming mental health at a societal level, which improves young people's, you know, mental well-being over a lifetime, increases their ability to engage in education and work, and for the NHS and the health services will, you know, radically reduce cost and the burden on already overstretched psychiatric services. Okay. Any questions on this one? Howard, are there questions coming through?
No.
No?
All good.
Okay.
Antoinette, just checking, that is a legacy hand, isn't it? Yeah. So I thought so. I wasn't sure if you switch it on and off back on quickly, but no, all good.
Okay, so to kind of summarize some of our top tips, first of all, immediately answering the question in one sentence and then elaborating. Rhetorically, it can be really powerful to write like this. So rather than answering the question right in the last bit, you know, we've done all of our research and this is what we found out. Oh, and by the way, our customer is this. If they say, you know, you're solving the problem of whom, our customers are students in London universities aged 18 to 25 who suffer from chronic or acute experiences of mental health challenges. And then you can elaborate. We know, A, that there are 850,000 students in London alone. We know that B, 6 out of 10 of those students suffer some experience of mental health challenges in a particular year. And C, only 4% of those students can actually afford to pay for therapy. So one quick question, one quick summary sentence, and then 3 almost bullet point answers. So in technical language, that is called a tricolon. So I came, I saw, I conquered. As Tony Blair said when he came to power, education, education, education. For some reason, grouping information in 3s can be really powerful. So when you're writing your benefits, put them in groups of 3. That, for some reason, just lands better. Second top tip, this is a really important one. Next steps after this workshop, go onto the website, copy paste all of the questions onto a Word document or equivalent, and just draft your responses. What happens with me is I just put down all of the information for my response all at once. It might be like 1,000 words and it's all a bit messy, but you know, I iterate and improve so I can get down to the word limit, which might be in different cases 50 words or 300 words. But I'm testing it out with my friends, with my flatmates, with my family. Does this make sense? Is this compelling? Does it inspire you? Draft and draft again, so that by the time you submit on Sunday or before, you've done a few different versions. So yeah, test out your application answers with people who don't know about your idea. And then also use evidence. Can you prove there's clear demand for your idea? And in particular, as we mentioned before, primary research can be amazing way to show this. Even better, can you say, I've already got 50 people signed up to your newsletter, or 30 people have given me their email to find out more, or I've actually already sold 8 of these, or you know, I've set up a launch event and I've got 60 people coming. Like specific data points to prove that you can make this happen. And to take this forward, we've actually put together a step-by-step guide to effective applications. So at the end of this workshop, you'll have these slides, you'll have a recording of this workshop on YouTube as well if you want to go back to any parts of it. And we've actually got this Google Doc with a step-by-step guide to different case studies to give you guys the best possible chance. Hello and welcome, Manoj.
Hi Ed. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. We would love to hear about your journey with Organa.
Sure, of course. So hello everyone, I'm Manoj, one of the co-founders of Organa. I was taking part in the health track last year, which is awesome. Organa was a startup where we were making synthetic organs for medical device development. So we were trying to replace animal testing and cadaveric testing by providing these synthetic tissues that mimic the physical properties of real tissues. So thereby you wouldn't need to actually use animals in human testing anymore. It was an amazing journey of 1.5 years, which was really cool. Unfortunately, it did come to an end recently, but we learned a huge amount through the experience. We raised funding, shipped products, presented and pitched in a lot of places around the world, and learned a lot from acceleration programs and competition programs, much like the Mayor's Entrepreneur. And the Mayor's Entrepreneur was a very, very cool program. I do recommend everyone try to take part if you can. I think the biggest kind of takeaway from the Mayor's Entrepreneur was being able to communicate the work we were doing, which is really valuable when you're kind of pitching to VCs, when you're communicating with funding bodies and all sorts of ways. So throughout the process, we really polished our pitch, made sure everything was understandable in the 2 minutes we had to pitch, and that provided a real solid foundation to go into the future to raise funding. So it was a very valuable time for us. So can't recommend the program enough.
And Manoj, what's your advice for these guys on the call for making your idea in written or in video format as compelling as possible?
I think the key is to be able to communicate it as simply as possible. So a layperson should be able to understand your idea. You don't want to throw in a lot of jargon. You don't want to kind of assume they have the knowledge or information already to understand what you're making. So you really want to dumb it down as much as possible. I think one of the questions in the application was, how would you describe this to your grandma? And I think that really sums up the way you should kind of think about the way you're communicating anything you're doing with your startup.
Sure. We spent a bit of time thinking about that today. Can be hard. It can be really hard, especially if you're, a very technical idea and spend a lot of time researching and developing it. But getting that feedback from friends, family, whoever it might be, can really help.
Definitely.
What other tips and advice would you share with people today?
I would say really kind of practice a lot. You don't want to kind of have to look at notes or kind of try to be stuck in a situation where you're trying to remember your pitch and it's not smooth and coherent. So practice it a ton. Practice in front of a mirror so you understand what your facial expressions look like when you're pitching, what your hand movements look like. Really kind of nail it down, because it's your one opportunity to present your startup as best as you can. And again, it's valuable not just for the competition, but for so much more in the future when you're talking to other people. So do a ton of practice, nail it down, make it compelling, make sure all of the information is there in the time period that you have, and make it very, very simple to understand. I think those are the major things to bear in mind. You really don't want to come across very monotone, be energetic, have some life around it, make sure you seem as interested in your startup as you think other people should be. Those would be
just to jump in here. I love this advice. Just to clarify for those guys on the call, the video part of the application is for the next round, the semi-finals. So for those of you being like, what, video pitch? First round, just written. Second round, video pitch. So that clarifies. Out of interest, Manoj, how far had you got with Organa by the time you applied?
Yeah, so with Organa, by the time we applied, we were probably about 8 months into doing what we were doing. So we had some idea of kind of the market we were targeting, our ideal customers, how we communicated with them already in terms of how we were pitching to them. So we weren't kind of going into the Mayor's Entrepreneur without any experience at all. So it was a bit of a bonus there. But that's not to say that someone who's applying on the 12th without having done anything before wouldn't have just as good a chance. It's really about communicating your startup as best as you can.
Sure, and I can't stress that enough. I know it can be a bit nerve-wracking applying for these awards, and some people think, everyone's got all of the answers already and they've got products and they're making money and whatever. That is not the case. For those of you who have come onto the mentoring sessions, I think there were these like light bulb moments when everyone's like, actually everyone's in the same position as me. They don't know a ton of stuff like behind their business, and it's a lot of assumptions at the moment. That is so normal for any founder or entrepreneur. That is like the reality pretty much forever. So yeah,
I can assure you we were definitely not making money by the time we applied to the Mayor's Entrepreneur. So we were not a high-flying, amazing startup who didn't need funding. We just had some early conversations, had some idea of what we were doing, and there was still a lot to be learned, which we did learn.
And Manoj, where are you now? How are you spending your time?
So I'm wrapping up my PhD. So hopefully end of this year, my PhD will be done. Unfortunately, Organa did come to an end because we couldn't quite hit the product market fit on the head. And the healthcare scene does have a lot of regulation in it, which means it's very difficult to kind of overcome that. But hopefully diving into the entrepreneurship world again in the future after the PhD. It's really cool being able to run your business, especially in an early stage where you have to make all these difficult decisions which really impact what you're doing. And you have so much responsibility on you. And I really like the challenge of having to do that, set a vision for what you're doing, strategize. So it's a lot of cool facets and roles that you have to take that you don't really get much opportunity to do so in a world outside of entrepreneurship.
Nice.
And I think, Manoj, your experience is such an interesting one, and it's so cool to hear that you kind of want to are looking to become a founder again in the future. So I think often when people, let's say, don't get to the stage of the competition they want to, or they don't win tons of cash in the final, they're like, oh, I haven't achieved what I wanted to achieve. Honestly, and this is not me just being kumbaya about stuff, like the important stuff is not the cash, it is the experience, learning the skills, meeting new people, building your network, getting exposure, and also just kind of realizing that you can do this stuff. Like, entrepreneurship is hard. The fact that you are all here engaging in this, ready to submit an application, having spent time working on this, it's terrifying. It's horrible. It keeps you up at night. It's uncertainty. It's all this stuff that human beings really don't often respond well to. So you should be really proud of yourselves getting to that point and having developed and grown so much through this process. Manoj, before we wrap up, any final thoughts, advice, inspo for the guys on the call?
As you said, Ed, just to reinforce, there is a cash prize if you get all the way to the end, but there's so much more value that comes from this program on top of just winning this cash. I mean, the network I was able to create, I'm still in touch with a lot of the other founders that were on the program then, and they've gone on to do very cool things. So if you want to dive into entrepreneurship again, if what you're doing right now doesn't work out, it's such a huge bonus being connected to people who've navigated that, have the connections to make it happen. So it's a really cool program. Can't recommend it enough. Please apply. There's so much value in it.
Manoj, thank you so much.
No problem at all.